So it is official. Matt Doherty has returned to Wolves today. An announcement was made at around 4 p.m. this afternoon in the UK. And yeah, it's the first big signing of the summer for Wolves. Of course, very early days, we brought in Tom King as a third choice goalkeeper. But Matt Doherty is the first sort of big signing, first outfield player. And like I've said before, I really hope now this starts almost a domino effect and we'll start to bring in some more players. But it was revealed around 10 days ago that Wolves were back in talks, or were in talks with Matt Doherty about bringing him back to the club. And of course, there was mixed reaction to this news. I did a video sort of last Monday on this, very quickly giving my brief thoughts on it. But you know what? I'm in the same sort of stance. I think this is a clever signing from Wolves. I think it's a good signing. I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives for me. I think for a player of his experience, on a free transfer, to become a squad player, I think it's a really solid addition for Wolves. And I think he'll give some really good competition for Nelson Semedo. Of course, people have got reservations in regards to his play style, where he'll play, his position. Under Julian Lopetegui, really all we've seen is a 4-3-3, 4-4-2. Well, basically a 4 at the back. And Matt Doherty had his best times at Wolves and his best football really playing in a back five as a right wing back. Finding himself in some fantastic attacking positions, getting some great goal contributions, especially in the season that we were in the Europa League. So it'll be really interesting to see how he transitions into becoming, obviously, a right back in a back four. Although we did see Lopetegui experiment a little bit, less than a handful of times we saw a back five. The ones that I remember clearly was against Everton away, which did work in our favour. We ended up winning that game with Ryan Aït-Nouri bursting forward from the left. Nottingham Forest, which was a really disappointing experiment, and I think Liverpool in the FA Cup as well, both games in the Cup. So it might be something that Lopetegui's worked on, and that would work well with obviously Doc coming in. With Doc coming in, that will probably allow players to be moved on. Johnny's already a player that has been spoken about being free to move on. Keanu Hoover, it sounds like as of today, he's back in talks with Stoke City to be moving there again on loan. But let's have a look at some of the quotes anyway. Obviously, Doc returning today, had his medical in Wolverhampton yesterday, which was Wednesday the 19th. But Matt Hobbs has said, we're really happy Matt's back, and he's one the manager really wanted when he knew he was available. After Spurs and Atletico Madrid, he's hungry to prove himself again and will add strength in depth to the full-back area, providing competition and making us better in those positions. He knows the club and what it means to play here. He's been successful at Wolves before and he knows what the fans want. For us, it's another homegrown player, but one who can share his knowledge and the required standards across the group, so he will be able to slot back in no problem. Matt Doherty also gave some of his own thoughts, including obviously playing away from the club. I've grown as a player in my confidence, physically improving again. Tactically, I've worked with some of the best managers on the planet. So if you can't improve with them, then you're never going to improve. I've experienced some really good trips away in Europe, and it was 3 years that I had a great time also, but I've managed to find my way back home. Some really interesting thoughts as well in regards to the competition at right back, because everyone would assume, and I would assume as well, that Nelson Semedo will probably keep his place there, but Matt Doherty is also a player that can, push him. I think Semedo had spells, especially under Bruno Lage last year, where he would have a great game and then have a really poor game, and then Johnny would come in and vice versa. They would sort of repeat the same thing. Then he had little injuries, he had suspensions as well. But in Matt Doherty, judging by these quotes, he said, you want to go somewhere you're going to be playing as much as possible. As much as I love my time at the other clubs, I wasn't able to get a run of games consistently for whatever reason. I guess that was a challenge of playing against some top players constantly and consistently. But let's get my head down here first in pre-season and see where it takes us. By that quote, it looks to me and sounds like, is he assuming that he's going to be playing a lot more football than what we expect? Like I said, I think the biggest challenge and the biggest thing for a lot of fans is that we need to see how he plays in a back four. He did enough in a back five for us, because although at times he might have lacked a little bit defensively, he was able to add goals and get goal contributions. But let's see. I've got the thoughts now of Matt Hayes. He's a Tottenham fan and YouTuber and blogger. He gives us his thoughts on Matt Doherty and what's happened since he left Wolves to move, obviously, to London with Spurs.
I'm Matt Hayes from Matt Hayes Tottenham blog. Thanks for having me on to speak about a player that I'm sure you all know very well, but one that I'm also sure you have a lot of questions about over the last 3 years of his career. And I'm going to try answer them as best as I can. And look, I wish I could sugarcoat it, but Matt Doherty was a huge disappointment for us. He came in with a lot of promise. I think maybe more Spurs fans in just the era that we were in with Jose just coming in and taking charge. We had a lot more optimism about the direction of the club and where we were going, and we were hoping that Matt Doherty could be a part of that. But I mean, he had a few glimpses throughout his spell at the club where it looked like something might happen, but there was nothing really consistent enough from him to stand out for us to even say that. Well, we did think he would come good at some point. It just never really clicked for him. And going back to when we made that signing, I was really excited, not just as an Irishman, but I thought he was a player that really would have suited Jose Mourinho's style at Spurs. Obviously a player who was so good going forward for Wolves and getting on a score sheet and just getting involved at the right end of the pitch. And with the way we were playing at the time, Jose liked to use a bit of a lopsided back four. So we had Davis and left back who was tucking in, and then whether it was Serge Aurier or Matt Doherty out on the right hand side, where the majority of what they had to do was attacking and trying to get involved in goals and assists. And I was optimistic that is something that could work for Doherty, but not long after he came in, things went really sour with Jose and Spurs, and our form as a side started to go downhill, and Doherty I suppose was just a victim of that, and things changed so often, I think, from that point that it was difficult for any player to get that bit of consistency, but Doherty is one that kind of struggled more than most. And look, when we brought Nuno in the summer of 2021, I think we all thought that could be the chance for him to revive his career at Spurs. And Dave, I spoke to you on my channel at the time, and we kind of both had that same feeling that back to something a bit more familiar for him, that he will be able to kick on. But look, I think we all know how that Nuno time went. And I was actually, before I'm recording this, I went back and looked at some of my tweets about Matt Doherty to kind of just remind myself of the timeline and the way things went. And judging on my tweets, the time under Nuno was pretty bad, and just nothing really changed pre-Nuno, post-Nuno with those performances from Doherty. And when Conte eventually then came in, it was November 2021. The rumours about Doherty leaving started straight away, and we all know Conte's his history and his reputation, that he just relies so heavily on wing backs in his system, and they need to be the best players in that team. And Doherty just hadn't shown enough to kind of be given that opportunity long term, I suppose. And from that first moment, there was a lot of rumours, and we were linked with a swap deal for Adama, who we thought could fit in that Conte style. But it was Emerson Royale who got the nod on the right hand side, and because of the issues we were having on the left, Doherty was given some opportunities out there. There were quite a few games where he played out on the left hand side. And there's one game in particular, I'm pretty sure it was against Chelsea, where Doherty played out on the left, and he just looked like someone who'd never kicked a ball before. And it's not entirely his fault, because he's played his entire career on the right hand side. It's not an easy thing to go and play on the other side of the pitch, but it just wasn't happening for him. He was, his end product was so poor. This is on the left and the right. He sometimes got into good positions, putting it across. It just didn't work out defensively. He was solid, but without being anything too spectacular. And he did have an error in him, which, with the way that we were playing and the way that we've been leaking goals at the back for so long, if you have a great game but you make one mistake, that's what we're going to remember, because that quite often is the difference between 1 and 3 points for us, with just how few goals we were scoring at that time. But there was a 4-game spell for Doherty in 2022, where he was the best player that I had ever seen in a Spurs shirt. It was towards the end of the season, as we were really clicking under Antonio Conte. I think from February to May, we had the best form in the league apart from Man City. And Doherty had 4 games where he was absolutely spectacular. He scored a goal against Leeds. He was chiming in with the assists as well. But he got, I have in my notes, Cash murdered his knee. We were playing Aston Villa. We beat them, I think, 4-0 or 4-1. Again, he was having a fantastic game at Villa Park, and Matty Cash with an awful challenge. I think Doherty ended up doing ligaments in his knee, and he was out for the rest of the season and the beginning of last season. And he just never came back from that. And it was, unfortunately for him, he didn't have enough time playing at a good level before that injury for us to say, well, we can give him the chance, because so much of his career at Spurs had been a disappointment that he just never got back into that team. He made a few more signings in those positions, and I think the writing was on the wall from that point that he would be leaving Spurs at the first opportunity. And then that deadline day saga in January just gone happened with Atletico Madrid, and it was such a bizarre one because Fabio Paratici, who was our director of football at the time, he's kind of known for not being able to sell players. So there were so many players that we were loaning out, and it even started the previous summer where Lo Celso went to, I think it was at Villarreal, you had Ndombele going to Napoli, Joe Rodon and Jed Spence went to Rennes in France, and it was just it seemed like every couple of days Spurs were loaning out a player. And on deadline day, Atletico Madrid came in and were interested in Matt Doherty. And again, it was going to be a loan deal until the end of the season, and Spurs would, revisit his future there. And all of a sudden, it was announced that we terminated his contract. And what actually had happened there was, under UEFA rules, you're only allowed a certain amount of players over a certain age out on loan. There's some rule there, and we'd hit that limit of 8 when we loaned out. I think it was Jed Spence maybe the week before Doherty. Whoever it was, we loaned out someone just before Doherty. And it was something Spurs didn't figure out until they tried to register the transfer, the loan move, and then we ended up having to terminate that deal, which it came as a surprise, but I wouldn't say it came as a disappointment or anything to Spurs fans. I think it just wasn't working out. He needed something new, we needed something new, and it was the best move for everybody that he went. And then somehow things managed to get worse for him. That spell at Atletico Madrid, only made 2 appearances in the league. And it's disappointing because, again, look, as an Irish fan, as a Spurs fan, he's a player that I loved when he was at his best, and I wish it had happened better for him. And even with Ireland, every now and then he has these spectacular performances. We played Portugal in, I think it was the Nations League last year, and he pocketed Cristiano Ronaldo for the entire game. He does have that sort of performance still in him, but he's someone who, it's just disappointing how his career has fallen off. And I'll be watching with a keen eye back at Wolves, and I'll be hoping that he can turn it around, because there's definitely a fantastic player in there, hopefully in kind of happier surroundings and more familiar surroundings, that he'll be able to refine that form. But unfortunately at Spurs, it just didn't click.
So big thanks to Matt once again. I'll leave a link to his channels in the description. It sounds like it wasn't a great time, obviously, for Doc in London. Great experience for him as a player, I'm sure, and like Matt said, he had some decent spells, but the majority of his time there wasn't fantastic. And at Atletico Madrid, but like Doc said as well, he's played under some great managers. Obviously spent a little bit more time under Nuno. He's played under Mourinho, played under Conte, played under Simeone. So even, just the little things, I think there's going to be a lot less pressure on him coming back to Wolves. And it's an interesting signing. I don't think he's going to, set the world alight, but at the same time, I think it's a solid addition for Wolves at a time where we need that little bit more experience still in the squad, familiar surroundings for him. Like I said, I think I said it on a transfer video yesterday, Lopetegui traditionally likes quite an experienced and slightly older squad, a mix of youth and experience. And I think Wolves have got the youth, but probably not quite the experience at the moment. So I think it's another welcome addition for me. Do let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below anyway, guys. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I'll catch you all very, very soon.